Mr. Greedy eats clean to get lean. Mr. Greedy liked to eat. In fact, Mr. Greedy loved to eat, but the older he got, the fatter he got, and the more he drank, the fatter he got, and the longer he was married, the fatter he got, until his middle age had spread so much that he stopped wearing clothes altogether. Mr. Greedy lived in Fatland, where everyone loved their food. They liked nothing more than devouring a cheeky boona, downing a cheeky wine, and demolishing a cheeky cheese board, followed by a cheeky bottle of Gaviscon the next day. But things were changing. It all began when Mr. Small started juicing. Then Mr. Muddle read somewhere that it only took 15 minutes to get lean, so he spent 10 minutes exercising and 5 minutes posting pictures of himself in the gym. Then he got himself some personal trainers. Hashtag Mr. Men Who Lift. Hashtag I'm in the gym. Hashtag please like me. Hashtag look at my shoes. And Mr. Tickle was in the 5-2 diet. Unfortunately, he'd got it wrong and fasted for 52 days straight. He lost so much weight in such a short amount of time that his arms were now mostly loose skin. Mr. Greedy thought it was all rather silly. One day he was in the park thinking how silly it all was when he saw his friend Mr. Worry walking very quickly. 9,993, 9,994, 9,995, counted Mr. Worry. Morning, said Mr. Greedy. Don't interrupt me, said Mr. Worry. I'm counting my 10,000 steps. I read in the Daily Fearmonger that if you don't count them, it's really bad for you. All right, chuckled Mr. Greedy. Shall we have breakfast when we're done? Breakfast takes 10 years off your life, panicked Mr. Worry. I must go. And off he went again. 1, 2, 3. At least Mr. Greedy had Mrs. Greedy. Here's my jelly bean, she said as he got home. I got you a treat. Mr. Greedy peeked in the box, and what do you think he found? Black Forest gateau, jam donuts, chocolate eclairs, courgette cake. Why would she get him something so green? Mr. Greedy had strong views on vegetables masquerading as cakes. Had she been brainwashed too? Surely not. Come to think of it, she'd been hiding the biscuit tin, and she'd been leaving gym leaflets around the house, and she did keep talking about her colleague Mr. Perfect, who cycled everywhere and still had all his own hair. Was she trying to tell him something? He was sure it was fine and she wasn't having an affair, but just to be on the safe side, he decided to become an irresistible muscle-bound god. Luckily, just at that moment, he saw an advert for Mr. Strong's boot camp. Are you getting fat, old and bald? Does your tummy have so many rolls you could open a bakery? Sign up to Mr. Strong's boot camp and get square in no time. So Mr. Greedy went to boot camp, which for absolutely no reason started at 6 a.m. on a Saturday. Boot camp starts with protein, shouted Mr. Strong. 73 raw egg later, all Mr. Greedy had done was a load of burpees and been sick on the floor. Keep going, bellowed Mr. Strong. Don't you want to be able to tie a knot in an iron bar? Not really. What's the point? Said Mr. Greedy. Because Mr. Strong fell silent. For the first time in his life, he questioned his entire existence. Then he quickly overcompensated by pushing over a tree and yelling testosterone. The only pounds Mr. Greedy had lost were the 350 he'd spent on the boot camp joining fee. At least I tried, he shrugged. Heading home, he bumped into Mr. Perfect, who was busy doing squats. Mr. Perfect had perfect hair, a perfect smile, and perfectly fitting cycle shorts that revealed a lot about him. He stood up and appeared to be holding something he'd deposited while squatting. Energy ball, he said. No thanks. Mr. Greedy was greedy, but even he had limits. After begrudgingly sponsoring Mr. Perfect 50 quid for tough Mr. Mudder, Mr. Greedy decided to give fitness one more go. He went to see little Miss Somersault. She was busy balancing an interior design business, raising 6 gifted children, teaching yoga and building her lifestyle brand, Clean Living Guru. I treat my body like a temple, which means I clean everything, said little Miss Summersalt as she cleaned Mr. Greedy from top to his bottom. You simply buy food that is whole, unprocessed, and direct from the health food shop. OK, said Mr. Greedy. And then you put it in the dishwasher, said little Miss Summersalt, just to make sure it's extra clean. She was just on a call from one of her many celebrity clients when all of a sudden she cocked her leg in the air and bent over backwards. Are you all right? Asked Mr. Greedy. I'm fine, she replied. I'm just doing the upward-facing farting dog. Nothing was working. He even tried calling in on Mr. Clumsy, who had recently gone gluten-free, but it wasn't a good time. What's the matter? Said Mrs. Greedy at dinner that evening. You haven't touched your fava beans. Mr. Greedy explained how he had been trying to lose weight so that she'd fancy him again. Fancy you? Of course I fancy you, she said. And then Mrs. Greedy explained that she'd been trying to lose weight so that he'd fancy her again. Fancy you? Of course I fancy you, he said. So we both fancy each other, they both said together. And with that, Mrs. Greedy chucked the fava beans in the bin and hugged Mr. Greedy's roly-poly tummy. Then Mrs. Greedy had a splendid idea to make them both feel better. She invited Mr. and Mrs. Giant from next door round for dinner. And do you know, from that day to this, Mr. Greedy never felt big again. So if you're as greedy as Mr. Greedy, you know what to do, don't you? Find some bigger friends. The end.